It's not power creeping, it's more like power leaping. With the introduction of terror zones to help things become more accessible while adding a twist, we ran into an immunity problem for people that have less time in the day. An example of this is you're playing a fire build that you really like, and every single time you come home from work, the terror zone is on a rotation where the monsters are always fire immune, making it so you really can't experience the new content. Today, I'm going to be giving some of my ideas as well as some things that I've heard on the internet as solutions for this problem while trying to maintain the Diablo feel and also keeping the game more accessible for the broader audience. So we're going to list the ones that are my favorite first, and then we're going to go into some of the ones that could also be a solution, but maybe they're not my favorite. I have been reading some of your comments, and you guys do actually have some pretty cool ideas. I really do try to read all of the comments, so if you have any more ideas that maybe I didn't bring up here, let me know. I would love to hear them. So the first one, I'm going to be pretty biased about this one, is the BTDiablo Fix. For those that do not know, I have made a mod called BTDiablo, and in this game, the way that I actually fixed the immunities in this game is not actually by fixing them at all. All I did was increase the variety in farming areas by making the entire difficulty level 85, which is the max area level. In addition to that, I made the Ubers the kind of terror zones, and I made them level 96, so that way the elites can be level 99. By making every zone equal, that fixes two major problems: the need to get to somewhere very quickly, aka Enigma, and also the problem of immunities. If you can't farm that area because you have immunities there, you can go to a different area, and there is always an area in the game you can farm with a pure build without immunities. So the reliance on Infinity is kind of eliminated, and the reliance on Enigma is not really as necessary. These things are more quality of life for maybe farming the areas that you prefer to farm. Now for the terror zone implementation for this method, if every area was 85, terror zones are super viable too still because they're based off of your character's level. For the terror zones, to deal with the immunities inside there, I would actually just take away the immunities altogether. However, hear me out, because that in itself would just make the area the easiest area to farm with the most benefit. So what I would do in addition to removing the immunities, I would also make the zone have an affix on a rotation as well. Say you got the Far Oasis, and this time it rolled extra fast. All of the monsters in the Far Oasis are extra fast. Now say you got Far Oasis again, maybe the next day or the next week, the next time you log in, maybe this time they're extra strong for that hour on that rotation. So you could do things like that. We have affixes for the area and elites. That would be interesting. Just remove the immunities and add an affix to kind of balance out the ease and the difficulty together and make the terror zones something really special that we all remember. Now, that of course is my favorite one. Another solution for the immunity problem is back in 1.07, or the same thing pretty much happened at Diablo 2 Resurrected launch, immunity was affected by things like cold mastery. So if a monster was immune and it said it was immune, your cold mastery was actually able to kill the monsters because it didn't care that the monster was immune. It still pierced the resistances. So if you had pierce on your build or on your gear, what I'm suggesting here with this 1.07 type of change is that the pierce is effective even if a monster is immune. This essentially makes it so not only things like Infinity and Low Res, Amp, Decrep, all that stuff can break, but things like pierce can also break immunities. Another one is equal resistances for all monsters over 100. So we don't really change a whole lot here, but say for example we make all of the monsters equally resistant over 100, so that way when you put on an Infinity, you can actually deal damage to every single type of monster. This is a solution to be able to do things like fire builds, things like lightning builds and stuff like that. It kind of still gets some of the same result as the Sunder charms, but without the super OP minus 80 resistance or whatever you might hit with some of these combinations and builds. Currently, for those that don't actually know how the resistances kind of work, is that when a monster is over 100% immunity, the effects of lore resist and conviction or anything that can break that immunity, amp, decrep, those are 1/5 efficient above 100%, and then they continue even after the break to still be 1/5 efficient. Now if the monster is below 100, then the effect is 100% efficient. So another solution here would be to make it always 100% efficient, even if the monster was immune. So over 100, this actually makes it so it's a little bit easier to actually break some of those really high resistant monsters, and it kind of keeps the identity of that monster, as well as if you're super stacked gear with a bunch of facets, you could probably take out the monsters pretty easily. Another method is to make all the monsters that were immune 99%, maybe with the exception of elite packs or something like that, to give some little extra spice, and then pair that with infinity and lower res, or the things that pierce, with a pretty significant reduced effect. Say for example, infinity is only maybe -30. Probably something similar to the mod Project Diablo 2 has done with the reduced effect of pierce and ways to break things. So in Resurgence mod, they came up with an idea so that the Act 3 mercenary kind of runs a conviction aura, but it's a special type of conviction. If you choose a fire mercenary, you get a fire conviction. If you choose a light mercenary, you get a light, a cold gets a cold, etc. Pretty much what this does is it gives you the conviction and the pierce for that element much earlier on. It might be a little bit weaker, but it allows you to actually take out some of the immunities. And it gives the Act 3 mercenary much more of a use. You could also do this with items, maybe give the items that type of like feel for different types of conviction auras, building some diversity with the infinity market as well, maybe making the Burr rune a little bit less sought after. Another suggestion comes from Jay Ferreris, who I actually saw in the YouTube comments. He says that long term, these Sunder charms simply need to be something that's consumable. Make them spell ethereal. Good for X spell casts, then disappear. That's an interesting idea to make them consumable. I never thought of that actually, and I really like this comment, so I wanted to show this to you guys. You could go with the POE style and also just kind of do away with the immunities and pierce idea altogether. Basically just making it so all the monsters just have a different value of HP. However, I do feel like this kind of makes some of the monsters lose their identity. If you're on a specific build, for example, that Death Lord is scary for you on this build, but it's not on that build. It adds some flavor to the characters, and to me, some pretty good character fantasy. Then you could also go with another method that I've seen before, and that I actually experimented a little bit with on BTDiablo, and that is the Absorb method. I believe this is done in the Median XL mod. Correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially you kind of deal with immunities where the monsters are no longer immune, but instead they're absorbent. Now, if you wanted to kill a monster that's super absorbent, you just stack more and more pierce against that type of elemental resist. Pretty much regardless of what you do, we kind of need to adjust cold mastery if we're going to be moving around to resistances, just because Blizzard Sorceress already is a very strong choice in the early game, but if we start adjusting resistances to kind of level the playing field a little bit more, Cold Mastery is so far superior with the amount of pierce that you can get compared to other builds so early on. So pretty much no matter what you do, you gotta touch Cold Mastery. For melee going forward, I really think we need to remove the level calculation in the attack rating. Basically, if the monster is a higher level than you, he's just going to be hard to hit pretty much no matter what you do. That is just, to me, kind of annoying and stupid. This also makes it so things and activities like terror zones are going to be a lot harder when the monsters are guaranteed to be higher level than you unless you're literally 99. In BTDiablo, I decided to buff the attack damage of weapons by about 50%. I think that this would be really healthy for melee as well overall, especially when you have such a power spike when you look at grief. And these are the suggestions I would give for trying to keep Diablo kind of still Diablo without changing the game too much. However, if we wanted to throw all that stuff out and just start balancing around the Sunder charms now, what I'd recommend is for melee to actually remove the AR entirely and add melee splash. I really am against this in the base game, but because we just kind of went buck wild with the Sunder charms, might as well just go crazy with the melee as well. But if this is just a seasonal thing where the Sunder charms poof at the end of the season, then maybe for season 3 we do something crazy like that for season 3 and melee, and then at the end maybe those items disappear as well, and we'll just have memories of what that season was like, and maybe take some of the good parts and implement them into the next ladder, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the ideas I have. If you can think of anything else, definitely let me know. I'm super interested. I read all the comments and try to keep up with responding to all of them, but you guys have been on fire lately, so it's hard to keep up. Anyways, much love, guys. You are all beasts.